Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Hot Mic. I'm Megan Mannering, joined by my fabulous co-host, Evie Schultz. Evie, we have a really special episode today.
We do. We say that every week, and they're all very special.
They always are.
But this week, our guest is related to me. It's my dad, Steve Schultz. He is zooming in from West Lafayette, Indiana, to talk about something coming up next month in November that's very exciting. You might have actually heard about it or seen stories on the news about it.
I feel like we're a little late to the game. Steve, you've been making the media rounds. Why are we the last people to get you?
Well, your New York main headquarters has the story. The Today Show is our primary broadcast partner, and they carried our press conference on July 2nd when we announced this collaboration. Purdue and Purdue Research Foundation announced a collaboration with Archaeological Legacy Institute to go on this expedition. We can talk about it.
Definitely.
Yeah,
they were the first to get the scoop.
Yeah, for those who don't know, this expedition involves Amelia Earhart. What is the expedition specifically to find?
We are embarked on an effort to go identify an object in the lagoon of a remote island. It has to be one of the most remote places on Earth. It's the island of Nikumaroro in the Republic of Kiribati, just south of the equator, in the middle of the South Pacific. There's something that was discovered on satellite images in 2020 that looks like a plane. And this is actually building on about 36 years of research prior to the images being noticed on satellite in 2020. Work had been done on this island and around this theory since 1989. And the theory holds that Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, in their attempt to reach Howland Island on July 2nd, 1937, did not crash at sea, which was the official story after one of the largest search and rescue missions in human history. 2.5 weeks, the Navy and the Coast Guard searched for them. They did not reach Howland Island, and they essentially disappeared. But this theory holds that they flew south by southeast about 400 miles and landed on this island. It was then called Gardner Island, now called Nikumaroro. And there was a lot of evidence that's been built up. I mean, as an attorney, when I first saw it, I'm like, this is an incredible circumstantial case. The things that have been found on that island and the other evidence that's been amassed around their radio transmissions and bearings that were taken on some of their radio transmissions, all sort of pointing toward this theory. And then, of course, the satellite images discovered in 2020. So we are going there, we Purdue, along with the project lead, Archaeological Legacy Institute, to see if this thing that's in this lagoon is indeed the lost Electra flown by Amelia Earhart in that tragic flight.
That is so cool. Like, my dad is a retired gym teacher, and your dad is exploring the history of Amelia Earhart. That's kind of crazy. That's crazy. Well, Steve,
it's not my day job, Megan, but I sort of fell into my lap, and we can talk a little bit about how that came to be.
Definitely. What is your day job, and how did you get on board?
So I'm the general counsel at Purdue University, and in that role, I also serve as general counsel to our affiliated foundation, Purdue Research Foundation. Purdue, of course, is Indiana's land-grant university, been around since 1869, and the foundation was actually formed in 1930, one of the first university research foundations of its kind. And actually, Purdue Research Foundation gave the money to Amelia Earhart to acquire and outfit what she called the Flying Laboratory. She was actually a faculty member at Purdue between 1935 and 1937 at the time of her disappearance. And she was invited to Purdue by President Edward Elliott. He was a very forward thinker. He saw, of course, she was by that point a worldwide celebrity. She was larger than life. She was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic, first as a passenger, and then the first one to fly herself as a pilot across the Atlantic. On both of those occasions, she, of course, returned to the United States to ticker tape parades. She was friends with Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. In any event, President Elliott of Purdue and she, Amelia, both spoke at a conference in September of 1934, and they actually sort of resonated with each other. The topic was about how the United States is going to emerge from the Great Depression. And President Eliot was, from the land grant mission standpoint, was, we need to upskill our students and basically get them meaningful jobs in the economy and in the workforce so that the economy can grow. And Amelia, in contrast to some of the other speakers, was talking about careers for women, and not just women being very responsible, home economists and great homemakers. But she said, no, we need women to become doctors, lawyers, pilots. And so President Eliot really liked that. And he wanted to grow the number of women enrolled at Purdue, and also to retain them so that they would get their degrees. So he thought Amelia would be the perfect person to come and be a career counselor on campus here in West Lafayette. It also happened to be the case that Purdue was the first university in the country to have its own airport. So she, of course, wanted to continue flying, and that was appealing to her. And Purdue had just started a very young, a fledgling aeronautical engineering program. And she was invited to do that as another part of her job, which was to be the consultant to the aeronautical engineering program. Of course, years after that, that same program would attract the likes of Neil Armstrong and Gus Grissom, and that gave rise to Purdue being the cradle of astronauts. So Amelia really sort of started it all. She came here in 1935. Before she even set foot on campus, the number of first-year women enrolled had a 50% increase. So
wow.
President Eliot's gamble paid off. In any event, while she was here, Purdue Research Foundation said, hey, we know you want to continue flying. We know you have in your aspirations this idea of a long-range flight. And there are some research components to that, the effect on the human body of long-range flight, much like NASA would do, in terms of the study on the human body of space flight. And so they raised money, Purdue Research Foundation, along with some donors, and established the Amelia Earhart Fund in Aeronautical Research. She then used those proceeds to acquire this Lockheed 10E Electra from Lockheed and outfit it for long-range flight. And she began planning her mission to be the first person, not just woman, first person to circumnavigate the globe by air around the equator. And of course, it was on that mission that she was lost.
For those who don't know, my dad is a girl dad. I have 3 sisters. I'm the oldest of 4 girls. So we grew up with a dad who was very encouraging. You might imagine people say, oh, your poor dad. No sons, you have no brothers. What does your dad do? But I will say he's always been a great girl dad. And when you're talking about Amelia Earhart, what sticks out to you specifically that is so inspiring about her story?
Yes, Evie, I'm glad to hear you say that. She is a great role model, and I would hope that she's a great role model for you and your sisters. She had to be one of the most courageous Americans who ever lived. Some have criticized whether she was the most highly skilled, technically trained pilot, or whether she, was somewhat perilous. May not be the right word, but she didn't give a lot of thought, for example, to having really good technology for air-to-ground communications. That ended up being a problem when she and Fred Noonan were trying to find the tiny Howland Island in the middle of the Pacific. But one thing that you can't take away from her, she was audacious. She was, as I said, incredibly brave. And she didn't want to have anything hold her back. She was really dedicated to expanding the bounds of human achievement, and certainly in the air. And she wanted to do this because, as she told, I have a letter here in my office, a letter that she wrote to President Roosevelt in November 1936. And she basically says, look, the State Department's being really helpful as we're getting all the permissions to stop in the various places that we're going to need to, because they were hopscotching around the world. They would have to fly a certain amount and they would land at the next airport and so forth. So the State Department's being really helpful, Mr. President. The flights being undertaken under the auspices of Purdue University, they're also being very helpful. And then she went on to say, it has no commercial value. I'm really just doing this flight because I want to do it, and because I think that every now and then women need to do things to show what women can do. And I think that pretty much sums up Amelia Earhart. On the expedition, joining me will be Purdue's youngest astronaut, Sarisha Bandala. And she is, I call her sort of the living, breathing lineal descendant of the Amelia Earhart legacy at Purdue. So she'll be a really good spokesperson, and she speaks very well to this. But again, she sort of, all of our cradle of astronauts can be traced back to Amelia and her role and her impact at Purdue. A
true trailblazer, and what an honor that you get to be a part of this. Steve, tell us kind of the nuts and bolts of the expedition. How long will you be there, and what will the day-to-day look like?
Yes, so we are leaving on October 30th from, poignantly, Amelia Earhart Terminal at Purdue Airport. And we will be going to Eugene, Oregon to meet up with our expedition leader, Dr. Rick Pettigrew of the Archaeological Legacy Institute. He's an archaeologist based in Eugene, Oregon. And we'll pick up a couple members of our expedition and some equipment. And we will be heading to Majuro in the Marshall Islands. We will overnight first, though, and refuel, much like Amelia planned to do on her flight, in Honolulu, and make our way to the Marshall Islands. I believe we have a dinner at the U.S. Embassy on November 3rd, and then we will get on the boats on November 4th, and we will be at sea for 6 days, traveling about 1,200 nautical miles out into the middle of the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. Be on there for 6 days, and then we will get to Nikumaroro, and we will go ashore. When the British, by the way, Nikumaroro is uninhabited. It was, for its entire history, it's mostly remained uninhabited, although the British did try to colonize the island between 1945 and 1963. They gave up based on drought, really because of drought conditions, and finally took settlers off in 1963. And for reasons that we'll get into, that if you're interested in terms of the theory of how Amelia and Fred Noonan landed there, the reef is a very high reef on this Pacific atoll. It's the top of a volcano, like all atolls are. And it's a very treacherous reef as a result. So the British got tired of bringing people on and off the island by having to traverse that reef. So they just dynamited the thing. And so there's a channel called the Blasted Channel that we will use to access the beach every day. We'll go onto the beach on the first day. We'll have to machete through the jungle and get to the lagoon. That's one half of the team. The other half will drag a Zodiac boat around to the opening of the lagoon, and they'll come and get us. And then every day we'll just retrace our steps through the Blasted Channel, through the machete path, through the jungle, and then across to the Taria Peninsula. And I can talk about the Taria Peninsula and why the object is called the Taria object. But in any event, we'll be doing that for 5 days, and we'll get back on the boat and 6 days home. Now, in the course of that 5 days, maybe the third or fourth day, not sure when, we hope to be able to identify whether the Taria object is the remains of the Electra.
Wow. I get goosebumps thinking about the possibility of that happening. What do you mentioned as an attorney, you're looking at this case thinking, this is super convincing. What do you think is the strongest piece of evidence, in your opinion, that this could be the Taria object? Or that the Taria object is Amelia Earhart's Electra?
That's a great question. I waver in terms of what's the strongest piece of evidence. I mean, each piece in and of itself probably isn't sufficient. But when you take it all together, as I said, it's a very compelling circumstantial case. But what's never been found, as Dr. Pettigrew says, is the smoking gun. This is potentially the smoking gun. But so let's take it maybe one step at a time. If you care to hear a few pieces of the evidence.
Let's do it. Let's go there.
This is hot mic.
as I said, their radio transmission capability was very faulty, as it turns out, tragically so. And they could not find Howland and the folks on Howland and the radio operators on a cutter, a ship a U.S. Coast Guard ship, the Itasca, could not reach them either. It was essentially a Murphy's Law. They were transmitting on the wrong frequency and at the wrong time based on a miscommunication about what time they would check in. But one of their last transmissions very clearly stated, we are on the line 137, 557, I believe it is. And that's essentially a line of position, a longitudinal line of position. Fred Noonan was a celestial navigator, meaning that he could navigate with the sun and the moon and the stars. And so he would have been able to know what that line of position was based on the angle that the sun rose that day. And that angle essentially comes across the globe based on as the sun moves across the globe. So he knew that they were on that longitudinal line of position, and he knew that they were probably right on Howland, but he didn't know if they were approaching from the north or the south. We believe that they headed north for a while and didn't quite see Howland, and so they turned south. He had been a Pan Am Airways planner, so he knew that they're based on his map awareness, knowledge. He knew that there was the Phoenix Island group south of Howland. So we believe they headed on that line of position, and it just happens to take one directly into Nicomaroro, then called Gardner Island. That's one thing. Then for the several days after, as the Navy and the Coast Guard were searching all around Howland Island, thinking that they might be floating on the sea, having run out of gas. And again, there was an exhaustive search. By the way, a plane did fly over Gardner Island, now Nicomaroro, and somebody said there are signs of recent habitation, but that was never followed up on. It's sort of frustrating that was never followed up on up the chain of command. But in the several days after that, and maybe Evie, this is probably my favorite story. There were radio transmissions heard on the mainland United States where people swore, "I'm hearing Amelia Earhart. I heard Amelia Earhart say,
no way.
Plane is on reef south of the equator." My favorite of those stories is from a then 13-year-old girl named Betty Klink. She was in St. Petersburg, Florida. Her dad had a souped up shortwave radio. And for 90 minutes, she wrote in her diary. It's called Betty's Diary. She wrote notations of what she was hearing. She was hearing clearly a man and a woman arguing as if they were in a confined space. Give me that. Put your foot up there. I can't do that kind of thing. And she died at age 85, I think, just across the border from here in West Lafayette and Hoopeston, Illinois. But when she was interviewed a couple years before she died, she was asked about some of the things that were in her diary. One of the things she wrote down was NY. I heard, and I said, why did you write that? Well, that's kind of an old-timey way of saying New York City. Back in the 1930s, people said NY. And why would Amelia Earhart have been saying New York City, New York City? Well, until you realize that in 1929, a British vessel shipwrecked there. That vessel would have been on the reef of the island. And Amelia and Fred would have been able to see the name of the ship. And guess what the name of the ship was?
New York.
The Norwich City. So she was probably saying Norwich City, and Betty was writing down New York City, which is what she thought she was hearing.
Very interesting.
1940, bones were discovered on the island. In 2018, a study of that osteologist report was done, looking at the size and stature of those bones, and it was found to be a very close match to Amelia based on a large reference sample using large databases, modern databases, a compact case, a freckle cream jar from the mid-1930s. Amelia was famously embarrassed about her freckles. A woman's blucher shoe of exactly the type that she wore, a zipper that exactly matches the zipper on her uniform. These are the kinds of things that have been found by this group. By the way, I have to mention their name. The International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, or TIGER, has been responsible for developing what's called the castaway hypothesis.
Wow. This is wild. I did not know a lot of this history. Like you said, I'm getting goosebumps, and I can tell that you have to be getting pretty excited, Steve. But I'm curious, with all these clues here, the average Joe might think, well, hop on a plane and go check it out. But I'm sure so much has to happen before you can launch an expedition of this nature, right?
Yes, Dr. Pettigrew has been working on this for years. We've been fortunate to come alongside just in the past few months. He reached out at the beginning of this year, and he knew about the Purdue connection, and sort of elicited whether we'd be interested. And of course, we were, as we looked at the circumstantial case and realized that you know the evidence is so strong, including the satellite imagery of the Tarai object. But as we've talked about, not just that, everything that's been built up, we believe that we owe it to Amelia and her legacy at Purdue to follow the evidence where it leads us. And as one of my expedition colleagues recently said, this is a science project. And sometimes in science, you have to rule in truths. You have to prove the hypothesis. But sometimes you have to rule out speculation. Our hypothesis was wrong. But what we can't do, and we may be disappointed and conclude, well, there's something there along the Tarai Peninsula in the lagoon, but it's not, in fact, the Electra. And that, of course, will be disappointing. But what we can't do is not go there, given the evidence that we have. And so we're in lockstep with Archaeological Legacy Institute, firm in that conviction that we have to go. But you're right, it is a lot of planning, and we've been working on that. I mean, just this morning I was on a call with one of our Purdue alums who has a contact. We've run into a logistical issue about getting our equipment to the island. It's a sophisticated set of equipment, including a solar array, because we're effectively going to the moon. It takes, by the way, twice as long to get to Nikamororo from Majuro than it does to go to the moon. So we are going to be on our own. The boats, of course, will have what we need to be okay. But on the island, we have to make our own power, and that power will be used for operating the equipment like a magnetometer, a side scan sonar, and other things to try to see what's under the water and under the sediment. So that's a complicated exercise, the equipment itself, but also getting the equipment. And I was on a call with a Purdue alum who's got us in touch with FedEx of all places. FedEx is going to become a new sponsor because they're going to help us get our equipment there. But yeah, just the remoteness of the island itself it's a daunting task. It's funny, Megan, that you say that, because the chair of our board of trustees was teasing, why don't we just go on a cruise line and get out? I'm like, if it were that easy. One very important thing is that this island lies in a sovereign nation, the Republic of Kiribati. And so we have to get their permission to go there, And one of the members of their government is going to be with us on the expedition. So we're pleased to have their support.
And you've actually been there already earlier this summer.
I've been to Kiribati, the capital of Tarawa, and there was a very significant battle there in World War II when the Marines landed there as part of their efforts in the Pacific Theater. So yeah, Tarawa was known to me sort of through history, but I went there to meet with government representatives along with Dr. Pettigrew and another colleague to lay the groundwork for getting their support for the expedition.
Wow. His pictures were pretty neat. He was able to send us photos along the way of that trip. And this next trip is going to be even more incredible.
I'm sure your family group text will be blowing up.
Yes, we are. It's very Amelia Earhart focused right now. I do have to ask, as my dad, obviously I've known you my whole life. And those listening and watching can tell and he's going to hate that I'm bragging on him, but he's very smart, right? He reads a ton. He picks things up really quickly. He's basically learned all of this Amelia Earhart history.
I'm sure they're not just choosing anyone to go on this expedition.
Yeah, they've compiled people who I think really are passionate and who know their stuff. But I know you love history, and you've always been interested in expeditions, that type of thing. Did you ever think you'd get the opportunity to participate in something like this?
No, never. As you know, Evie, I've always been interested in seafaring adventures, but I never thought I'd get to go on one. And certainly my first one being this significant. People ask me, how in the world does the lawyer get to kind of convert into the role of an explorer? Very honored to be able to do that, of course. But it really, and that's why I was on the original email when Dr. Pettigrew reached out. I think he'd heard that I had some familiarity with the archives. But This is, I think, the sixth time in my almost 13 years at Purdue that Purdue has been contacted with a claim or an inquiry. Hey, we think we may be on to finding Amelia's plane or finding the solving that mystery. And because of our role in funding the plane, the president of Purdue, Mitch Daniels, for many years, and now Mung Chang, always asked me, go into the records, go into the archives, let's figure out what our claim on the plane really is. And so I've sort of become the corporate history, the corporate historian in terms of that story. And I can tell you that we don't, unfortunately, based on some advice of my predecessor many, many decades ago, we do not have a contractual claim on the plane, a legal ownership claim. But I will say we have an equitable claim using my legal analysis here. The equitable claim is in the nature of donor intent. That is, Amelia and her husband, George Putnam, were both very clear that they wanted to return the plane and display it at Purdue as a living laboratory had she been successful in returning home. And there was a great letter from George Putnam to President Eliot saying, can you imagine the students of 1977? He was forward thinking at that point, projecting 40 years. The students of 1977 being able to see what was being used in terms of equipment and instruments and so forth. And so we would like to honor that intent, if at all possible, if we're able to identify the Terrae object as the Electra, and ultimately if we're able to excavate and extract it. We'd love to bring it back to Purdue and be on display as a tribute to Amelia and her legacy here. And so that would be sort of the long-term goal of all this, if indeed we're successful.
Kind of logistics and legalities aside, Steve, how are you feeling going into this? Because you did say this is not your day job. This has to be pretty different than what you're doing on the day-to-day. What kind of feelings do you have heading into this exposition?
Well, I have a little bit of trepidation about seasickness or how quickly I'll get my sea legs. Everything I've heard is that, indeed, about 3 weeks ago, we met in Seattle. It was the first time the expedition team, most of us, had been able to get together. We actually toured the twin of the Electra that's on display there at the Museum of Flight in Seattle. But we spent half the day hearing each other's presentations, and a couple of experts, veterans of Nikumaroro expeditions talked. And one of them was our medic. And he basically said, everybody gets seasick at least once, but you can take preventative measures. And I've done that. I'll probably wear the patch and the wristband and things like that. But I'm a little leery of being, out in the open ocean for 6 days, and hopefully I won't get too seasick. That's probably my main worry. Also, what I'll be doing for 6 days. Evie knows, we've been on a couple of cruises together, and I sort of get bored, and there are activities.
They're giving you things to do on those ships.
Exactly. So it'll be nice time away from my phone, put it that way.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, very
You're going to have
exciting.
some stories when you come back.
To me,
Yes,
I'm sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say that, as you can imagine, and we talked about the broadcast arrangement earlier on the show, but the Purdue Marketing and Media Team and Archaeological Legacy Institute, we're very aware that people are going to be following this, and we sort of feel that responsibility too, to tell the story in the right way. By the way, there are going to be multiple stories to come out of this. There'll be the story of the expedition itself. There'll be the story of the history of Nikumaroro and how that may have, intersected with Amelia's fate. And then there'll be the larger story of Amelia, and Purdue looks forward to telling that story. But, if we have news either way, we're going to,
we will be the first to know, right?
And so
Hot mic.
that's going to be a very carefully orchestrated thing as we're on the island. And we're all sort of sworn to secrecy to rally around that.
Okay.
That main point. Yeah.
I guess it's good that you're so remote, because it'll be hard to get the news out if something happens either way. I do want to ask, you mentioned, obviously, you feel you owe it to Amelia Earhart to go see if this if this is the Electra. There are maybe naysayer isn't the right word, but there are experts and researchers who say they don't believe that this expedition is going to be successful in that way. What do you say to that?
Well, I think, science is about the search for truth and formulating hypotheses and then testing those hypotheses. By the way, one of those critics is Rick Gillespie, the head of Tiger. And we and Archaeological Legacy Institute give Rick and Tiger all the credit that they deserve for developing this very compelling hypothesis, the castaway hypothesis. Mm-hmm. But Rick Gillespie, as you may have heard on the Today Show, does not believe that the Turaya object is the Electra. Nonetheless, it's for people to test. Nobody has the final say in terms of a truth-seeking exercise. So until the hypothesis is tested, we won't know. And so I think we, if we're willing, we deserve the ability to go and check it out. Mm-hmm. And again, we think that we have the responsibility to do that. Now, it may prove to be a tree. We don't think it is because it has all the attributes of a metallic object. It reflects light. It's the size of and dimension of the Electra, this Turaya object that's seen in satellite imagery. So again, as I said earlier, what we don't think we can do is just ignore it, because then the world will never know.
You sort of have to channel your inner Amelia Earhart. What would she do in this case, right?
Ooh,
she would.
I like that.
She would go figure it out, I think.
Yeah, it is. She's audacious. She was audacious, and this is a little bit of an audacious undertaking. So we're ready to tackle it.
I imagine this has to rank pretty high in kind of the pinnacles of your career, would you say?
It is. It's certainly the most exciting, I would say, and potentially the most the most impactful in terms of solving potentially the greatest mystery of the 20th century. So the chance to be able to do that, or to be a part of that, is certainly the highlight of a career, I would say, even though I have been blessed to do a lot of exciting things. Was counsel to a governor, worked with the state of Kentucky, actually, on a very important bridges project where we built the two newest bridges over the Ohio River at Louisville. And then, of course, my years at Purdue have been pretty exciting as well. But this would be, in terms of the arc of history, this would be the biggest, I think.
So cool.
Yeah, we're proud of him for sure.
Absolutely. Well, the newsroom has been a buzz, Steve, because Evie has been keeping everyone updated.
Yep.
Especially when you were on your first trip out there. We were waiting for the text to come in just to hear how it was going.
Yeah.
We are all very invested here in Kentucky.
Well,
yeah.
Good. We'll keep you posted for sure.
Absolutely. And hey, if you get the scoop, you have to bring it to Hot Mic first. We'll get that in writing. Okay. All right.
A little contract going.
I don't know if your counterparts in New York would appreciate it.
Yeah, no, probably
Yeah, we
not.
might have to fight people at Purdue for that too.
I want to switch gears because I know you kind of have a heart out here in a minute. So, Steve, I have to know, what was Evie like as a kid? Was she always so delightful and pleasant and curious?
She was always an old soul, I would say. She was able to carry on conversations with adults from a very early age. One of my favorite stories, and by the way, it's fitting that I'm actually going on this expedition with an archaeology crew, and actually her uncle, Don, tells the story. I think Evie must have been 3.5 or 4. And they were reading a book together about dinosaurs, and he asked her, would you like to be they were talking about fossils and things. And he said, would you like to be an archaeologist someday? And she said, Uncle Don, you mean a paleontologist?
Had to correct him.
Sort of
You're so smart.
but pretty well read to
Yeah.
to understand at that age the difference. I'm sure she had seen a show or something about
Probably
it.
on Arthur or something. Who knows?
Yeah. But Evie was she learned to read very early, and she was a voracious reader. So we would find her just, pouring through Good Housekeeping magazine, things like that.
The back of the Cheerios box, everything that I could find.
That all kind of checks out.
But as a result, she had a lot of interest too. So we did a lot of fun projects together.
to see her now in this role for LEX 18, she's anchoring mornings, to see how much she's grown in this career, that has to be really special for you guys.
It really is. And actually, it's really a fulfillment of, I don't know when I say prophecy, but a fulfillment of kind of the early aspiration that she had for herself and that others knew. Her mom and I would get on in the mornings when she was in high school, because at her high school, they would broadcast the announcements through their closed circuit TV. And we were sort of looking at each other like, she's kind of got something, like, we don't even know how she learned it, but she kind of has this je ne sais quoi, this certain something about being on air. And then, of course, she pursued that interest through college and has been advancing her career so successfully this far. So we're just very proud of her. And we still tune in on the occasional morning to watch you all.
They do live stream. I promise we didn't invite you on just to say nice things about me. And
no, that's exactly, that's exclusively why I wanted you on the podcast.
I think in their 8th grade prophecy, there was even something about person most likely to be, interviewing a famous person on TV.
We wrote a story for our 8th grade yearbook, and I think it was what everyone was doing, and who knows at that point how far we were looking ahead. But I was interviewing someone as a TV reporter from the 8th grade. I guess prophecy is what we called it. So yeah, it's kind of funny how things work out. And Megan also she has Hoosier roots. So
you're not the only Hoosier tuning into LEX 18.
Yeah.
My parents in North Central Indiana near Kokomo are also watching. And Steve, I have to tell you, we are Boilermakers. So I feel very comfortable talking to you today. My granddad was a professor of agronomy at Purdue. So my dad grew up in West Lafayette and knows all the go-to spots. And we would go to all the football and basketball games. We love being on campus. So it's really neat. I love hearing Evie stories of, they live up the road from Triple X, or we're going to Arnie's.
Yeah,
that all
right.
feels very nice to hear.
That's good. Well, it's good to know that connection. It's kind of in our roots too, as you probably heard, with Evie's grandfather playing 2 sports at Purdue. And he was, of course, very pleased when I got this opportunity to come up and work at his alma mater.
Yeah, I haven't even asked you this. So my grandpa, Ray Schultz, he went to Purdue, played football and basketball, like my dad just said. Like most grandparents, so proud of all of his kids and his grandparents. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. How do you think he would react to knowing that you were doing this? I mean, I just imagine he would be so pleased and telling everyone, bragging to everyone.
Yeah, he always wanted to do, I think his thing was he wanted to take a boat down the Ohio River, down the Mississippi, out through New Orleans, and then around the Atlantic coast. And so he would talk about that when we'd be on the lake, down at Lake Lemon. And I actually thought about that story the other day. I was actually at Lake Lemon and went down to the marina where I used to go to help Dad take the boat out and put it in the lake and get gas and things. And so, yeah, I have been thinking about that of late. I think he'd be, of course, very supportive and proud and eager, like everybody else, to see what we find out. By the way, while we were there at the Museum of Flight in Seattle, President Trump, you probably saw a couple of weeks ago, on social media posted that he had heard about all the interest in Amelia Earhart. It wasn't necessarily related to our project, but he, based on that interest, he was ordering the declassification of all records related to Amelia. Now, we don't know, we're not aware that there are any records that remain classified based on all of the research that Tiger and Archaeological Legacy Institute have done. We don't believe that there are any hidden records, but what President Trump said about the interest of the world in her life and in this story remains strong. And we saw that, by the way, on July 2nd, and then again on October 1st, when we announced our 30-day out, our sort of check-in with the media, 30 days from being there, or from launch. These have both been the single largest earned media days in Purdue history.
Wow.
That's how much interest. We've reached billions of people around the world through these media hits and so forth. And I think we're just going to enjoy that interest as we move forward here, and hopefully we'll have something positive and positive to announce to the world in terms of solving this mystery.
Yeah. People definitely are interested. You know, when the news was coming out, when you were on the Today Show, I didn't realize how many people were interested in Amelia Earhart. You learn about her in school, but for a lot of people, it's kind of just a name in the history books, unfortunately. And you're realizing, wow, people really want to know. It's such a great mystery that hopefully can be solved.
Yes, I think that is definitely true. That worldwide interest is there. By the way, the students in Tarawa learn about Amelia Earhart.
Wow.
So even in their culture, she looms large. But what we learned really on July 2nd was that not a lot of people knew about the Purdue connection. So
I didn't.
Hopefully we can continue to bring that story to light too.
Yeah. So special for you and your love of history and this big expedition. This is just such a neat thing for you. And I can't wait to hear how it all goes. Steve, anything else you wanted to share while we have you on hot mic, while the mic is hot?
Well, I hope there were enough hot takes here, but I appreciate you both having me on. And again, we'll keep you posted. Heavy through the fam chat probably, and
yeah, we have.
We'll check back in, as we when we come back maybe and give you a report on how it went down.
That would be great. We'll book you. We have the connection here. Our group chat for our family is called the Real Fam Chat. So
is Charlie in that one?
Actually, he's not. He's in a separate one.
Oh wow!
We made a separate.
Does he know that there's another group chat?
He does. Honestly, I think he'd prefer not to be in the Real Fam Chat with how often we're texting. In our family chat. So we like to keep each other apprised of all of our goings on in the day to day. But we are so proud of you. Just I know I speak for our family and all of your friends, and we're just so excited to see what happens. And honestly, it might be kind of nice for my mom too to have some alone time at home for a few weeks. Just relax with her and the dog. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Steve Schultz, you've been a fabulous guest. Rooting for you and wishing you safe travels on this expedition. Can't wait to hear how it goes. Thank you for joining us on Hot Mic, and to all of our viewers and listeners, we'll catch you next time.